Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a tier list, going through the discography of a particular artist or band and ranking those records from S tier to F depending on the quality. In this video, we are definitely going through one of the discographies of all time, Limp Bizkit, the Jacksonville, Florida band that's known for inventing rap and metal together. No, but really, throughout rock and hip-hop's history, there have been lots of fusions, lots of very popular crossovers, whether you're talking about the Beastie Boys, Run DMC and Aerosmith, Public Enemy and Anthrax, or the stuff Ice-T did with Body Count. You could do a whole historical analysis of the many times and ways hip-hop and rock over the years have influenced each other and fused in some kind of significant way to the joy of many music fans. And if you were to do a full and complete historical analysis of this, the darkest time in this timeline would handily be the late 90s and early 2000s. This is when, as far as mainstream appeal goes, rap metal and specifically nu metal was in full swing. This is an era of popular rock music that is not looked upon very fondly, as the bulk of all these bands and all these records that were very hot at the time, mind you, are not seen to have aged very well. Of course, you have artists and albums that are still beloved to this day. That is especially the case for Rage Against the Machine. Conversely, Limp Bizkit are often picked on as the worst band when it comes to rap metal and nu metal. While I think there is maybe a debate to be had there if you actually account for every rap metal band to ever exist, what isn't debatable though is that this band mainstreamed this sound, this vibe, harder than any other. It was also through their popularity and mediocrity that they would eventually go on to pretty much bury this wave, this trend as well. So without any further ado, let's get into the tier list. Kicking things off with their 1997 debut full-length album, $3 Bill Y'all, which is an interesting LP to see the band break through on because the biggest single off this project was a cover song of the George Michael track Faith, where Fred and the band bring this very cheeky rendition of the track with, of course, those playful rhythm guitars and kind of, silly, tongue-in-cheek vocals. It's flirty, it's silly, it's lighthearted, but then when the chorus comes in, that's when the riffs go hard and Fred is screaming his brains out. It's explosive, it's pretty fun, and you even have DJ Lethal on the bridge, like doing some sick DJ scratches. And I was very much around and listening to the radio and listening to rock radio when this song broke. I think a lot of the attraction of the song initially was novelty. Again, you have these rock elements, these hip-hop elements, and the cover itself as a concept is a bit silly. It was just a fun, silly cover to replay, but it's through the replay of this cover that Limp Bizkit were like, smuggling in the aesthetics of this rap metal movement and the vibes of the rest of this album, where they pretty much sound like a Red Hot Chili Peppers with more hip-hop elements and just a severe case of roid rage. And I think that's the most objective description I can give to this record before I really start tearing it apart, because, at the end of the day, it does suck. Because not only has the meat-headed white guy machismo of Fred Durst's vibe and energy not aged all that well, as it hasn't on any Limp Bizkit album, but also the production on this record isn't that good, and some of the performances are very audibly sloppy, like the riff's not even syncing in with the drums sometimes, while Fred is over here just like kind of screaming his brains out, thinking he's sounding tough. I would say there's like a splash of Sublime in there too. Like pretty much every type of tacky white guy from the late 90s and early 2000s could see something to enjoy in Limp Bizkit. They're angry, they're angsty, they're a little funky, and they got the riffs that make you want to jump the fuck up. But yeah, the ultra-aggressive tracks on this thing, when they're not ruining the record with their impotent rage, it's the angstier cuts on the LP, like Sour and Nobody Loves Me, that are doing it instead. Or on the song Stinkfinger, where Fred Durst is like pretty much trying to make this guy he has in mind look like some kind of asshole, when the whole song reads like him just being obsessed with this dude and just seething over the fact that he just kind of like leads a much different life than he does. Not to mention Fred's attempts at sounding like a real serious rapper on the track Indigo Flow are laughable. Yeah, I would put a $3 Bill Y'all probably down in the E-row. Cool. Going on next to the sophomore LP from Limp Bizkit, that would be their 1999 album Significant Other, which created quite the cultural splash. Limp Bizkit was coming at fans and the radio waves and everybody with more original material on this project. They did not want to continue pushing things as far as the covers front goes. They needed new, fresh hits, and on this record, they would get them, along with some nods from the hip-hop and metal world that would make them seem even more legitimate. Fucking Method Man is on this record. Also, Korn is on this record, who obviously their music hasn't aged really well, much of it anyway, too. But at the time, Korn had much more legitimacy in the metal scene than Limp Bizkit did. And I feel like a lot of Limp Bizkit's continued success, despite putting out such obvious trash from right out of the gate, was due to them getting nods and getting cosigns and essentially being given a pass for sucking ass. And look, there's a lot of tracks on this thing that suck ass. Fred Durst feels even more like safe and confident in his rapping ability and his writing ability on this project, and I think that that's not necessarily a good thing. He's very much high off his own supply. He is just huffing his own farts on this record. Like, there's absolutely no pretense whatsoever on some of these tracks in terms of like trying to sound cool or witty or anything. Like on the pitifully sad and annoying No Sex, or on the track Show Me What You Got, which is essentially like this shitty party rock song where Fred Durst is shouting out various spaces and locations, trying to say some funny rhymes in the process. Got lost in Boston looking for the Tea Party. Met a child molester in Worcester. I need a Kleenex every time I'm leaving Phoenix. I get silly when I play in Philly. And what's weird is like the band is no less derivative on this album over here, even though it's their second one in. The song I'm Broke, for example, in terms of the riff and also the rap flows, sound like a blatant ripoff of the Rage Against the Machine song Viet Now. The only parts and aspects of the record that sound wholly original and specific to Limp Bizkit are the crappiest and most obnoxious elements of their music. Now, with that being said, the biggest hits off this LP were improvements over the biggest hits on the last LP, because you do have the song Nookie on here, which does have a pretty solid hip-hop beat rocking in the background. The refrains on this track are pretty sharp too, and of course, who can forget the legendary cut Break Stuff, which might possibly be Limp Bizkit's best song, hands down. And also, frankly, one of the best and most fun nu metal songs of all time. It kind of pushes the angry meatheadedness of Limp Bizkit and this genre generally to a point where you can kind of just enjoy it post ironically. Significant Other is definitely like a cut above the debut Limp Bizkit record, and I could put it down in the D row. I still don't like it, but there are a few decent tracks on it. And yeah, but outside of those tracks, I still find Fred Durst as a frontman, as a lyricist, as a vocalist pretty annoying, especially since on this album he really like started to embrace that kind of cracked inflection that constantly makes him sound like he's really excited or surprised about something. Yeah, Limp Bizkit, motherfucker! All right, the third album in Limp Bizkit's catalog, that would be Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water. This is quite easily one of the worst album titles of all time, and also one of the most weirdly disgusting and unsettling covers to come out of metal music, which is saying a lot because in a weird, kind of like mentally disturbed way, I feel like this album cover is more unsettling than some of the goriest and grossest death metal covers out there. I mean, the weird pasty bald figures. I mean, yeah, this album cover is actually like kind of stomach churning. But I will say, in terms of like, I guess the quality, as you can call it, the pop appeal of what Limp Bizkit set out to do on their last full-length album, I mean, they were able to mostly maintain on this record. There are elements of My Way that I find to be legitimately fun, and Rollin' is also one of their more solid singles. And miraculously, the band was able to continue pushing, like, you know, those hip-hop nods they were getting at the time, with a freaking feature from not just Method Man again, but also Redman and DMX on the remix of Rollin'. Also, Exhibit is on this record too. exhibit. And legitimately, the production and engineering on this record is not all that bad either. The bass and riffs and drums sound really crisp and full. The issue is that they're just attached to really tacky and shitty songwriting, and Fred Durst on top with all the wicka 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 wow. Your mouth is cashing checks that your ass can't cash. Yeah! Of course, the aggression and the rap metal fusions on this LP are very one-dimensional and get very old, very fast, long before the record's hour-long runtime is over. Plus, you also have these tracks on here where it seems like the band is embracing even more their angstier side and pairing that with like more psychedelic washes of guitar and sounding like a crappy Deftones in the process. But yeah, ultimately, this record kind of feeds off the same mediocrity that the last album did, and really started to spell out the beginning of the end for Limp Bizkit. I would put it probably in the D row. Now let's get into the band's 2003 record, Results May Vary, which is kind of an unfortunate one for Limp Bizkit. It's regarded by many to be their worst record. Now, personally, I don't think it's their worst record. It just kind of gets that rap because I think this is the last album that like fans actually listen to. But of course the album does suck, and it is disliked for very legitimate reasons. One thing that I think got a lot of fans disheartened and upset about this project is that guitarist Wes Borland pretty much pieced out at this point in the band's career. And Wes did actually bring like a lot of good guitar work, good groovy riffs, and kind of a cool factor to the band that they just didn't have when it was simply Fred being the star of the show. So as a result, you have these really aggressive bangers coming right out of the gate with this record, but the guitars seemingly just don't go as hard, so the riffs just really aren't as visceral or as exciting. Plus, on top of it, you have Fred still at this point rapping and yelling as if he's like God's gift to hip-hop music or something. Completely and utterly laughable shit, even for the time period that it came out. And then you had a ton of other songs on this thing that were starting to tone things down with kind of a smoother, funkier brand fusion of hip-hop and rock and metal that I think might have been the band trying to, like, you know, essentially recreate another Take a Look Around type moment, you know, just copy and repeat the success of that single that was, interestingly enough, like a tie-in to a Mission Impossible movie soundtrack at the time, and, you know, had like the Mission Impossible theme interpolated into the instrumental. That I neglected to mention was off of Chocolate Starfish, you know, which sort of makes sense that the band would, like, you know, again, be trying to like extend that success with a similar sounding song on this LP, but again, was not working and just ended up like resulting in a bunch of crappier, lesser versions. While that song was cool and did, like, you know, expose the band to a lot of people at the time, like Limp Bizkit's hardcore and original fan base, like they're there for the dumb, stupid, break stuff, angry, like go crazy type tracks. Limp Bizkit is not like a chill, contemplative band that you just want to, like, you know, have some deep thoughts to, which is why the softer tracks on this record didn't go all that well, and why the cover of The Who's Behind Blue Eyes is so poorly received. I mean, even fans of the band have to admit how shitty that cover is. And it's sort of funny that, like, it was a cover that sort of, you know, broke the band in terms of like mainstream appeal and popularity and exposure. And then it would be another cover that would sort of like break a lot of people's faith in the band. Yeah, this record is pretty crappy. One of the least fun Limp Bizkit albums. I think you can probably put it over in the, let's throw it an F. All right, let's talk about the next Limp Bizkit album, the 2005 record, The Unquestionable Truth, an album that doesn't really get a whole lot of discussion or attention in the band's catalog, even though I think maybe it should, because it's so ridiculous, it's so crappy, and it's so outlandish, and it's so clearly a ripoff. This album, though it is short, because obviously I think it was intended to be a part 2, though there was never a part 2. All we have of The Unquestionable Truth is this part 1, less than 30-minute record, and it is song for song, lick for lick, lyric for lyric, a blatant ripoff of Rage Against the Machine, and that's it. Like, even down to the vibes coming off the cover art, like the band is trying to make this a really shitty political statement, and they don't really know what to point to or be angry at or be questioning. And that's kind of the reason why the album is so harmless at the end of the day, as far as like, its political leanings and statements go, because they're so non-specific in terms of like where they're aimed and what the point is ultimately. Pretty much everything that made Limp Bizkit at least like a little entertaining and a little fun is just completely sapped out of this record in place of some very poor attempts at like, trying to say something hard and real and truthful and meaningful or whatever. Possibly their worst record. All right, moving on. It actually took the band a while to come out with this next record. That would be Gold Cobra. There's not a whole lot to say about Gold Cobra. And then finally, that leaves us with... It was a genuine attempt at the time to make a comeback. Even though Limp Bizkit was pretty shitty when they were at their best, there still kind of was something to it in terms of like, production quality and maybe like at least some thrills. This album doesn't even have that and has little to no single power either. The band just kind of sounds like a former husk of itself at this point, even with Wes Borland back in the mix. Just kind of feels like a same old Limp Bizkit, but without any of the bells and whistles that actually gave them the mainstream appeal that they saw in the late 90s and early 2000s. This is going in the E-row. And then finally, that leaves us with their latest full-length LP, Still Sucks, which came out 10 years after Gold Cobra during COVID times, reviewed it on the main channel. There are actually some kind of fun songs on here, even though it is kind of like a short and crappily assembled record. Like, it's not a good album by any means, but again, there are at least like a couple of fun tracks on here. And at this point, Limp Bizkit seems like at least hyper aware of the fact that like their music stinks. So as a result of that, I think they kind of embrace that and they yuck it up a little bit and they have a little fun with being the butt of many rock and rap and metal joke. Because there's such good sports on this record, I can probably just spare it a little bit. All right, and there you go. There you have it. That is the Limp Bizkit tier list. It's shit.